Men are 3 times more likely to overdose. Men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide. Okay, so that's the plight of men. According to the new CDC data, nearly 3 in 5 U.S. teenage girls felt persistently sad or hopeless in 2021, double that of boys, representing nearly a 60% increase at the highest level reported over the past decade. A Pew Research study found in 2019, teen girls in U.S. were 3 times more likely than boys the same age to have depression. Even though Mike Domish doesn't like stats, like 1 in 6 women are going to be sexually assaulted on a college campus. And so there's a problem on both sides, men and women.
Yes. And we can talk stats, all day long, but the truth is the experience that women have is so different than men. So that's kind of, stats are a thing, and and everything, it's very nice, the work that Todd and I do together, because as much as I just focus on women and girls, I get all that information from Todd and his experiences in men living obviously he's not sharing the actual people, but the experience of men and their history and how that shows up in real. So I feel like a full picture, and just in my own experience as a therapist, obviously, the but that I always put out there is, being a woman in the world is so different,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I have so much, empathy and understanding for men's experiences. And it's hard. It's just the amount, I think the thing that women always push back on, is the amount of shifting and shape shifting that women have to do in their everyday lives, as far as, okay, this isn't working, so I need to do this instead. This isn't fair, but I need to accommodate this. This is life-threatening, but if I say something, I could lose my job. This is a situation where I should be able to go here, but it's not safe for me. And a lot of the onus is put on women. Mm-hmm. There is, when women go away to college, it is, you need to protect yourself. We just heard a story yesterday. Todd just told me a story about a girl getting roofied. And again, I know all these stats. I work with these girls who this happens to, but it's like, and I know you guys are doing it in Men Living, but where are the conversations with boys and men about what they need to change? Because my whole life I've been told how to change and how to accommodate and how to show up differently. So then it's not really about this article, Sean, but then when it's like, well, good, women are, there's finally some things where there's a shift, a change, and there's like men are like, yeah, but what about us? And my thing is, well, you guys can now shift and change,
right?
That is because we've been, I even, it's just funny things like when I first, got a job, like we had to wear suits all the time to look like you guys, and I had to keep my voice down to sound like you guys. And my dad told me short hair might be a better idea for you than long hair, so you're taken more seriously. Like the amount of shifting. So it's kind of like that's the mentality. And that's me as a somewhat privileged white woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That is a whole nother story when we're talking about women of color. And men of color. And men of color. Thank you very much. True. Absolutely. So it's, I think that sometimes we get too in our camps about, I can't believe you would say that, or, and that's not how I feel at all. It's more about, do we see all those things? Yeah.
Well, and I just, I don't want to leave Sean hanging out to dry here.
Right.
I do. I'm more than happy to him doing that.
And I'd have to go back and read.
Are you rescuing me?
The first time this has ever happened, right?
Hero energy?
No, I just, again, I'd have to go back and read your piece, but I don't imagine that you were making the case for what about us?
No, for sure.
I think it was more of a statement on how did we get here, so that we have to celebrate, the lack of men versus the proliferation of people of color and women.
Yes.
Right. As people will hear when they listen to our episode with Kareth, when we publish it, we talked about, she's a DEI consultant, and we talked about the fact that she's a Black woman who is insistent about including white men in the conversation in DEI, because like, how do you do it without everybody involved in the conversation? So to your point, and it's about getting those men to think about things differently, not to be leaving them out.
Exactly.
And just one other thing about the reaction to that headline, you mentioned I have 2 daughters. I also have a son. for Jack to see that headline that says, okay, everybody's celebrating white guys being out.
Mhm.
I mean, if you're a younger man or a teenage boy and you're seeing, the proliferation of that kind of language, hopefully you have somebody that can guide you and say, okay, you can think about this differently.
Right.
But if you don't, you're looking at saying, who am I?
Right.
And why, how am I supposed to adapt to this? So we think about it in terms of a 60-year-old guy.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But a 15-year-old boy,
Yeah.
how does he look at things like that?
Yeah.
And how does he adapt to that when it's like,
Well, and to be clear, like I'm 51 and I have enjoyed so much privilege, I'll call it. And when I was growing up, it was in the 70s and the 80s, and there's job security, there's all these things that was built in for me to succeed. We now know that 15-year-old boys are living in a different world than I was back in 1988 when I was 15.
Mhm.
So I do appreciate your point because, the stats are the stats, and, job, employment, women are more independent. Women can be more selective over who they're going to partner with, all these different things. And that was not like that. So I do appreciate your point that as a middle-aged white man, it's one thing, but as a cisgender white man who was born in 2005, it's not the same.
Mhm.
I'm comparing apples and oranges, I think.
Yeah. And, it's funny. I could even take it off of this article, that Sean wrote and just talk about why maybe a headline that gets written or why women have the responses they do. I was doing a talk with men and we were talking about emotional labor and it was going okay. I know there's a few people who never came back again. So I know that it didn't go great. But I would explain things like, in the morning, it's a struggle. And and I was using a very general thing. If the socks aren't put together, then that causes a domino effect of the kid doesn't have socks. And then we have to figure that out. And then they don't want to wear those because they're dirty. And it just creates this thing where traditionally, generally, not always, but women are putting those things together and doing those things behind the scenes. And that's a lot of energy. And one of the men and another man agreed. He said, well, just stop doing that and let the kids figure it out themselves.
Mhm.
Just stop doing these things you're doing. And maybe we could work this out. And it's such I get so tired of those kind of and that's not the only time that's happened because there's all sorts of, and so why women, I'm telling that story, not just because of that story, but women have responses when men are like, but, how is this affecting other people or how, getting concerned about something maybe that hasn't happened yet. And we're having experiences every day where we're not seen for what we're actually doing and how we're showing up and doing extra work sometimes or emotional work that sometimes isn't seen as making the world go round.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I know I'm not saying this because I believe it, but many people believe women are second-class citizens. I mean, right? We don't have the same rights as you do. I mean, we don't even have an equal rights amendment,
Mm-hmm.
So have there been shifts? Of course. And are more women going to college? Of course. So there's these little statistical things, but there's a culture. And again, I'm going to focus on Barbie for a second. There's this great, and I'm not going to give it away or read it, but this great monologue that America Ferrara does in the movie about women's experiences in the world, that they have to be this, but they can't be this, and they have to be this, and they can't be this. I think you guys could probably do a similar speech about what men can and can't be.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally see that. But it's we live in this culture of paradox and so whenever a man says, but what about me in any way, there's this kind of trauma response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it's justified all the time. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying it comes out of this what? And Todd gets it from me. I mean, he and I have this conversation where he'll say, but this and this. And I'm like, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes from a very deep old place. It's a trauma response.